Connecting the community through gospel. The new 980 AM WDDO Perry Macon.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants of the broadcast.
It is now time for the live broadcast of the NAACP with Gwinnett Westbrook and Mr. Dumas.
Good afternoon and welcome to our first segment of the NAACP Truth. I'm your host, Willie Dumas. I'll be joined later by President Wes Brooks. And we're happy to be here this evening and hope you're having a great evening yourself during this time of COVID-19. There's a lot of things happening across the city, across the country, and particularly here in the Macon community. And we want to inform you on some of those things that are happening. Just here this past weekend, the NAACP, we celebrated our Earl T. Shinholster Awards Banquet. And we recognize several individuals in our community that have contributed great service in the fields of education, law enforcement, just community service, and just a gamut of things that we have recognized, even veterans. So we had a wonderful time this past weekend celebrating the work that the community does and how we appreciate that work, because there's plenty of work to be done. Those of you who haven't voted already, you've got only a couple of days left to get out there and to cast your vote. This is a very important election, and we want to make sure that your vote is counted. So don't wait to the last minute. There are plenty of places here in the Macon area that you can go and to cast your vote, and so be sure to do so. Early voting is now in full swing, and we're looking for a great turnout, particularly here in the Middle Georgia area. For those of you who have already voted, kudos to you. You've done your civic duty by going out and casting your vote for your particular candidate. Hopefully later today in the show, we'll be joined by some leaders of the NAACP in the Atlanta area, and we'll be happy to hear with our state conference president, Mr. Woodall, and he's going to come and greet you and give some information that we think you guys need to know that's taking place across the state. Also, we look to be joined by Miss Helen Butler, and she's going to share some information with us as well. And so I hope you're having a great day today, and I hope you have voted. And if you haven't voted, that you are looking to do so. Just recently, we elected a new mayor in the city of Macon by the way of Mr. Lester Miller. I understand he and his transition team have been getting things together for the upcoming year to make Macon a great community. And I hope that they will work very closely with the NAACP as well as other organizations who pride themselves in making certain that we are correctly represented as it relates to education, as it relates to our judicial system, as it relates to our youth and our community. And so that's a big part of what we do here at the NAACP. And one of the things we always try to do is to get our membership numbers up. And so we're counting on you, the listeners, as well as those who are on Facebook, to join the NAACP. And if you'd like an application to join, feel free to stop by the office at 905 Main Street, Macon, Georgia. And also you can reach us by phone at 478-745-9944. And we can get you started with an application to join a great organization. Most people don't know that the NAACP is all volunteer. We don't get paid for the services we provide to the community. And so we're always soliciting support from volunteers and those who can help assist us in the effort that we're trying to maintain. And so If you haven't already joined our organization, we'd love to have you come on board and to serve, and we look forward to that. Joining us now is our President Gwen Westbrooks, and as she's getting set to talk to you and give you some information as well, we'd like to thank her for her leadership here in the city with the NAACP. As you know, there's a lot of work that's involved in being the president of anything. It takes a lot of time and commitment, and she makes the sacrifice to make that happen. One thing I want to note, in the last couple of weekends, we've been riding around the city. We've been doing motorcades all across Macon, Georgia, to get out to vote. And it's been a fun time, even though the pandemic has kind of caused us to do things a different way. We've kind of enjoyed, getting out there, beeping our horns, and just getting people excited about this election. And so at this time, I'm going to bring on our President Westbrooks, if you want to greet the people today.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad that we were able to get back on the show because, like the first vice president said, with this pandemic, it's so very important that we are still visible in the community. And so radio is a big thing right now with making sure that we get the information out and continue to get people educated on what's going on in the community. President Dumas, Vice President Dumas mentioned about the voter motorcade, and that's something that we actually triggered down from the state. And so the state had recommended that we do the voter motorcade, which was an excellent idea. We were able to go through communities that normally have a low voter turnout. So that's exactly what communities that we were targeting that had low voter turnout. And people were actually out filming, and they were, throwing the hands up, and we was telling them to make sure that they voted. And so we're hoping that people get out and vote. Like John Lewis said, Senator John Lewis said that it is crucial that we get out and vote. It's not a privilege. It's sacred.
Absolutely. That
we get out and vote. We're in a time now that is so very critical, and African Americans are facing a lot of things, a lot of challenges. And so I know that, the NAACP does not endorse candidates, but we deal with the issues. And so, President Dumas, you can remember when, when the 4 years ago, one of the concerns that we had was the civil rights, civil rights and human rights protection was actually looking at being dismantled by this administration. Laws that protected African Americans and that dealt with a lot of systemic racism, equality, and injustices. So a lot of that was being looked at as being dismantled, where we did not have that protection anymore. So those are things that we have to consider, African Americans. We have to consider those things when we get out and vote.
Yeah, it's not something that you just have privilege to. There's a lot of sacrifice that's involved in order to be able to do those things, and then they can be taken away. It's nothing that is etched in stone. It can be a couple of votes, and we're back to how we used to be some years ago.
Yeah, and I say it all the time. I try to educate. The NAACP try to educate people on the history of voting, because if people can understand where all this started from and where we at to this point, maybe it will encourage people to vote, because we didn't have the right to vote at all. And then even when we got the right to vote,
we didn't take advantage.
We didn't take advantage. Well, there were still voter suppression. There were still things being put in place to keep us from voting. As far as I remember John Lewis the other night when we was talking about counting jelly beans in a jar, and different things counting like bubbles. That. Yes, to make sure that you were literate enough to be able to vote. So there was still, and Georgia was one of the states that was under this protection. for voter suppression. And so now, back in 2013, they took that protection away because they felt that, now you have to basically file a lawsuit in order to get the protection. The different states, most of the southern states that were protected up under the formula that they took away back in 2013. So it's so very important. And at one point, we were having to renew our voting rights every so many years to be able to continue to have that protection. So, people, we just got to make sure. I know, people are saying, well, they're talking about voting. That's all they're talking about. Well, we're in a critical time right now. We're dealing with our health care, the dismantling of our the affordable care. And Mr. Dumas, you and I most have been fortunate enough to have health insurance basically throughout our life. I started working, I was 15, and I've had health care since I was, basically 15, 16 years old. I started working. And so the thing about it is so many people that don't have health care cannot afford health care. And so it's so very important that we look at all those factors when we get ready to vote.
And touching back on the healthcare issue, we found out during COVID really how important healthcare really is, because most people who have been affected by COVID will now have a pre-existing condition,
right?
And that would cause them some issues later on when it comes to additional health coverage. And so it's very important at this particular time that the Affordable Health Care Act is not dismantled in such a way that now that pre-existing conditions would affect, a large majority of the community. And so that's a very important issue that's coming up, yes, depending on what administration, comes into office.
Yes. And we have to, because looking back on pre-existing conditions, and it's in many different forms. Some people, like you said, with this COVID-19, some people, they are still affected by it even after the fact that they've tested negative. They've been positive, tested negative, but they still have medical conditions that lingers on after they're in the hospital and released and all that. So they're still having I know that our one of our former presidents, Mr. Edward DuBose, I don't know if you've been following him on Facebook, but he had to learn how to walk all over again. And he just posted something this weekend that, he's just so blessed to be able to be here with us today. If you saw the pictures and everything that he has gone through. But we have to make sure that we don't take this for granted. Absolutely. We cannot look at the fact, you have to look at the issues at hand. You have to look at your community, look at your personal or your family personal situation that's going on and see how it's being affected. Because in working in the healthcare field for over 20 something years, I've saw what happens when you have pre-existing conditions. And so you have people that lose their jobs, that they are offered COBRA, which is normally lasts for about 18 months, but the premiums are so expensive. So expensive, people end up not choosing to take COBRA for those months because of the premiums are being so high. So what happens is a lot of times when you change employments from another employment, they give you a grace period to have health insurance. And once that grace period is gone, then you're considered having a pre-existing condition if you have anything, had any type of medical conditions during that time before that grace period expires. So you come in with a pre-existing condition where if you find another job, they won't pay for it. Maybe sometimes it just depends on the company. It may be a year or maybe 6 months. But the point is that you have a condition that you can't get medical attention for because you have the pre-existing condition. So that's why it's so very important that we sit down and we look at all the factors that's being laid out. It's a lot of different things that that is going on that we really need to look at, that voting is going to make how we vote is going to make a difference. And like I say, if you stay at home, you can't complain. This is not a time that we need to stay at home.
Absolutely. And going back, piggybacking on the pre-existing conditions, the month of October, which is almost over, open enrollment. So a lot of families and a lot of workers right now are trying to make a decision on the type of health care that they're going to sign up for on their job. So it's a real critical time right now. And we have to really think about, how this can affect, people all across the country, because this pandemic is a health issue for the community.
Yes, it is. And we have some agencies here in Macon Bibb and throughout, I'm sure throughout the country, like, for example, First Choice and some other different clinics that are offering medical care and at a reduced rate, and prescriptions at a reduced rate. But we have to look at the fact that they're doing a lot of their appointments virtual with the patients, and you're picking up your medication, which is a good thing. But still, we're still we still have a healthcare crisis that we're dealing with. So we just got to make sure that we get the right people in office. Our country is in turmoil with systemic racism, with division.
Yes.
We shouldn't be. I can remember as a child coming up, you would see things on television and you would hear things, but this is the worst that I've seen it, as far as looking at things on television when I was a little child, as to what was going on, the racism, discrimination, and division in our country. And we did not get here by ourselves. There was a lot of, like now, back then there was a lot of different races that came together to support African Americans with the situations that cause so much harm and just to our people. And so even with now, we have people of all races, nationalities that have come together because people are tired, and some people are not with all of this racism and discrimination, and that's why they're coming together. But we still have people, for some reason, people still think that we are on the lower total pole, that we're different, that we're less than. And I it's just sad that people still carry those feelings inside, that it's gotten to the point where they've taken it to the streets. There's a lot of things that people are, you basically have to take a camera around now to record.
Exactly.
Because you don't know what people are going to do. We've had, some different killings by our law enforcement. So this is, like I said, a lot of this I think is coming from our executive, from the White House,
Exactly.
and it's trickling on down. And so, I think that people are in fear that they will lose their power that they think that they have. But I think that we just have to be, like John Lewis said, keep our eyes on the prize, and we just have to continue to press on and continue to fight for what's right.
And a lot of the protests that we've seen, around the country, as it relates to the killing of George Floyd and some others, I think too has kind of motivated the younger folk to become involved in something that we've been, as an organization, trying to get them involved in for quite some time. That we need organized support and organized demonstrations where the power to the people that comes from the numbers of people coming together. And I think now the younger generation is beginning to understand what we have been voicing all the time.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful thing, even though it's a tragic situation that brings about this type of support.
Right.
But it's a beautiful thing to see now people, hand and shoulder in a movement for justice and for, equality.
Yeah.
And so as an organization, we just, applaud the efforts of the community, of those who have fought for their rights and are standing up for their rights. And we're seeing more younger people voting now in the voting process.
Yes. And we saw that Saturday. I actually took a picture of a group of about 4 Black males. That's been, females normally will vote, but our Black males is where we're having a low voter turnout. But there were some young men that I asked, I said, have you all voted? They said, we've already voted. So I said, can I get your picture? And just to show that we got, our young people are getting out to vote. I really, with everything that's going on, I didn't think that we would have a problem with our young people getting out voting, as you said earlier, that they see now what we've been talking about all the while. So it was just so beautiful this past weekend that we saw a lot of young people. I am so glad that and that we have gotten our college chapter back at Mercer. We've always had a college chapter, so they have reestablished their unit, and so we're going to be installing them in office. They were actually at the park on Saturday with their T-shirts on, so we're going to be getting them installed. Now they're ready to work, and we want to make sure that we give them all the support that they need, because they are our future, our next generation in running this organization. So I just want to let you all know that we got some young folks that's ready to work. So you'll probably, I'm sure that you'll be seeing them out in the community and you'll be hearing their voices. We're going to be having a guest on in a little bit that we invited on to talk about. She's very knowledgeable of the voting process. And some years back, when Bibb County was trying to close basically almost half of the voting precincts, she was right here. She was here, and she's with the People Agenda, Miss Helen Butler. Helen Butler. Yes. She'll be on in a little bit, but she's very knowledgeable of the process. And I think if we can just, I just think sometimes you almost have to tell a story to our young people, why it's so important to vote. And I have been in the streets and people are just, when you talk to them and you explain to them why it's so important that we vote, and they're just amazed that the things that have gotten us to this point and gotten us to this point to vote. A lot of people, young people, didn't know that we at one point we're not even able to vote.
Absolutely.
So I just think that we just have to continue to make sure that we educate. It's educate, elevate, and execute. We have to those 3 things. We have to make sure that we do that. Mr. Dumas, I know that we're going to be looking at providing rides to the polls. We just have to work out a little different kinks in it. We have had some people to maybe volunteer for the polls, but we wanted to make sure that anybody that wants to vote that don't have a transportation able to vote. It's a lot of things that we have to work out because of COVID. We want to make sure that everybody is protected. So we'll be getting back with you, getting something out to let the community know what we'll be doing with that. We're going to be doing some phone banking to make sure we reach our community, the people in the community, our registered voters, to get them voted, get them registered to vote, so they'll be prepared to vote in the next election. And so we had some numbers on Saturday, and I think our our political chairperson gave me a figure that the people that actually voted in the Saturday voting was 1,854 people that voted. So in visiting, I know you were at one of the locations.
Yeah, North Macon.
North Macon. And so it was steady. The only problem that I can remember is that we had some observers that was actually at the Board of Elections, the main Board of Elections on Pinona, that were actually standing right in front of the door almost, that they had to ask them to leave or move or something to that effect, because they were actually talking to the voters before going into vote. So you can't do that as an observer. You're not supposed to talk to the voters before going into vote. So we can expect to see some of that probably on election day and probably throughout this election.
We had a little finasco going on in North Macon. I think there was a gentleman who had a certain mask, with the candidate on the mask.
Oh, yeah.
And didn't want to remove it. And even though he was offered another mask. And so, we had, they in turn brought law enforcement over to monitor, because tensions are high right now.
Yes, they are.
Tensions are high. And so some of these things we kind of know are going to take place. You got folk who want to agitate people and that kind of thing. But we've had a lot of support, particularly from our organization, to be monitors and to kind of keep an eye on how the climate is going with voting.
Yes. I know some years back, I think it was during President Obama's second campaign on election day, we actually had people from all over the United States that came to support Macon Bibb. And so our church, the Greater Antioch Church, was the headquarters, the meeting place. But we had so many people, like I said, that came from all over the United States that came, and we took shifts and we monitored every precinct. It was just so beautiful. People of all different races came together, and to make sure that there was voter protection during that day. But we did have some things that happened, had some problems with some people that just didn't want to do right, and which they know what's right. And we had some problems with some of the polling places opening late. And so, but we just got to make sure that this election is probably going to be almost or even more along that line. We're going to have people to observe at all the precincts. So we're working on that and making sure that we have voter protection at these precincts.
And Macon has been a hot spot for candidates campaigning. I understand today the Biden campaign is here in Macon today at the Tubman.
Yes.
And so just a couple weeks ago, the Trump campaign was here in Macon as well. And so Macon, is one of those places that candidates always flock to for support.
Yeah, I just know ever since I've been voting, Democrats has not won the state of Georgia. So even with back in 2008 and I think it was 2012, when President Obama ran both times, he didn't win the state of Georgia. Right. But we just got to make sure we get out and vote. You can vote for who you want to vote for, but you just need to make sure that you vote.
Absolutely.
On the issues. I want to encourage everyone that's listening. We have to make sure that we on your ballot, you have to vote those amendments. They are very important to make sure that you vote yes on all three amendments. And basically, one of the amendments is basically saying that when the money that's set aside for certain things, like they gave an example, when you get ready to go get your tires, change tires or buy new tires, they charge you monies to actually get rid of those tires. Because a lot of times tires are thrown side of the road, and mosquitoes and all of that lives in tires. So you have to pay a fee to dispose those tires. So you need to vote yes that money is used basically for what it's supposed to be used for, and nothing else. The Second Amendment talks about amending the Constitution to allow to move the protection for the government to be sued, because right now they're protected by sovereignty and immunity. So that means that you cannot sue the government, which basically I had a case earlier this year that was basically dismissed due to the fact that I sued the government and I was not able to, they were protected by immunity. So I lost my case basically just because of that.
Wow.
So that's one of the things that we need to make sure we vote for that, because it doesn't matter who you are. If you are not within the range of the law, if you break the law, then you should be able to be sued just like anybody else. And so the last amendment is dealing with our charity. For example, Habitat for Humanity, they build houses, and so we want to make sure that they're not taxed on while they're doing charity work for the houses that they're building. So we need to make sure that we vote on yes on all three of those, the amendments. And so we gotta just make sure we vote. Just vote your whole ballot. You make sure you vote your whole ballot.
And then people too should seek out sample ballots before, so they'll have an idea. And I think that actually helps to speed up the process of voting, because now you're more certain about what you're voting for and how you should vote, instead of, they get there and then they get stuck and don't really get a full understanding of the amendments. And so that type of information helps tremendously when it comes to voting.
Yes.
And particularly for first-time voters.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, you have some people that I was surprised that said that this was their first time voting, and so we just want to make sure you vote.
Absolutely.
Just make sure you vote. We have the NAACP has standards that we want. Like I said, we don't endorse candidates, but we look at the issues, and that's what we target the issues.
Absolutely.
And so that determines if those issues are something that the NAACP is that we're involved in, then that's what we're going to be dealing with. So we have to, like I said, we don't endorse candidates, but everything that is going on right now, it sends a strong message that we have to have a change.
Absolutely.
Have a change. We can't continue the systemic racism that's being taught to basically bring harm to other people. We have to deal with this. We have to deal with these hate crimes. Like I said, in the very beginning of the election, we just dealt with this dismantling of our rights being protected. So, we got to wake up, America.
Absolutely. And, the leading by example, we don't really get a good sense of leadership, from the top by leading by example. Even as it relates to COVID, we found that people were confused about what they should really do. Should they listen to the scientists, or should they listen to the leadership about, what they should do with COVID, as far as something as simple as wearing a mask or not wearing a mask? And we've got to really think about the safety of the people when it comes to this pandemic we're in. Not only are we in a crucial race, as it relates to politics, but also as it relates to COVID. So we got two issues we're actually dealing with at once,
Yeah. And it's just so sad. They've told us what we need to do to keep the spread keep this virus from spreading. And people they just refuse to wear a mask. And I don't know what it's going to take. I'm just hoping it doesn't take
a lot of lives lost.
Right. And so it's just so sad that we can't get people to just do basic things that's required for us to keep ourselves safe and keep other people safe.
And particularly in the medical field, we see the importance of our medical professionals, that they can, that they can be healthy in order to help serve the people. I was reading just in a publication this past week where a lot of the foreign doctors may lose their visas. And if they lose their visas, then, they can't practice here. And we depend on a lot of them to render care, to people here locally.
Right.
And so there are a lot of things politically as well as on the medical side that affect each other. And particularly with going into what they call a third wave, where they're expecting, people with flu and COVID. And I think the protocol is to treat every situation as a COVID case. And so that's really going to tie up the hospitals quite a bit.
Yes.
And,
do we have anyone trying to come in? Miss Butler's is supposed to be coming in at 4:30.
Miss Butler, I think the call.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
you're there.
Hey, Miss.
Yes, I'm here. I've been here for a while. I'm just listening to you all.
We had
Hey,
you in
Miss
the
Butler. How are you doing?
How you doing? I'm doing well. Thank you, Gwen.
That's good. Well, we wanted to bring you on the show today because I know that you're an expert on this voting process, and so we wanted to hear from you. This is Ms. Mary Butler from the People's Agenda. She's been in this for a long time, and so we're gonna let her open up the floor to her to just talk and give some information and tell her what her concerns is, and just give some information that's very much needed. So, Dr. Butler, if you'll just go ahead on and just tell us what's going on.
Well, thank you, Gwen, and for having me on this program with you all. I'm Helen Butler, Executive Director of the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. We were a group that was formed by the late Dr. Joseph Eccles Lowry. So our primary focus is to protect the right to vote and to ensure that people have access to the ballot without problems. And so what we've been noticing, while a lot of people are standing in long lines, we know that long lines shouldn't be the means for people to exercise their right to vote. So we're working to see what we can do to correct those problems. We want people to understand the absentee voting process. If you use that process, please, I know today it's too late to request a ballot. But what you can do is make sure once you get your ballot that you complete it and that you drop it in a drop box. A lot of counties, I know Nwmcp has some drop boxes available so that you can drop your ballots in. You don't have to worry about the post office getting them to the local Board of Elections in the drop boxes. Right. The Board of Elections actually picks them up. And so you're assured that they get them because they are the ones who are responsible for picking them up. So don't worry about mailing them, dropping in the drop box. You don't have to have a stamp on them to drop them in the drop box. You can't use another county's drop box. However, you have to drop it in your county's drop box. So we have a list where they are. They're on your local Board of Elections website that can tell you where those drop boxes are located, so you can drop them off, or you can just drop them off at the local boards of elections. So if you use that means, please do so. This is the last week of early voting, so please, if you're not going to use the absentee process, please vote early, because if you encounter a problem, you can get it corrected before election day.
Yes.
We have the hotline, the 866, our vote number, that can help answer questions you may have. We can have lawyers that are available as well to assist with other kinds of issues. But we want to make sure that everyone gets to exercise their right to vote. Again, you can call 866-OUR-VOTE, and that number is 866-687-8683. Election day, please, if you're going to wait till election day, make sure you know where your polling location is, because in early vote, you can go to any early vote site in the county, but on election day,
Right.
you have to go to your specifically assigned polling location, and that way you can find that on my voter page, mvp.sos.ga.gov. And if you don't have access to a computer, call 866-OUR-VOTE, and we'll help you know where you need to go to really exercise your right to vote on election day. Rise to the polls. We have an 877-524-8683, or there's a ridetothepoll.com, RIDETOTHEPOLL.com, where you can actually go and request a ride to the polls. Tell us what day you want to go, how many people will be in your party. We're providing rides, and there are lots of places that are providing rides. Well, we're not the only one, but please do that now. Make your plan. Make sure all your family members have their plan ready. So we want people to exercise their right to vote, Glenn.
Dr. Butler, I want to ask you a question. Can you repeat that number again, for the rides to the poll?
It's 877-524-8683.
And a couple other questions. If someone goes to the incorrect polling place, what should they do? If they're at the
incorrect polling place, again, this is for election day only, up on November 3rd. If you have time, please go to the correct polling location. If you don't have time, then ask for a provisional ballot, and for those races for which you might be entitled to, will be counted. But we want to make sure you go to the right polling location. So before you walk out the door, before that Monday before November the 3rd, call. Find out where your polling location is to make certain you know where it is, so you can exercise your right to vote. During early vote, it doesn't matter. You can go to any early voting location and vote, as long as it's within the county in which you live. So we want to make sure that people know where to go.
So if they get, for example, if there is 10 minutes to 7 and they don't have, is not able to, and they find out they're at the wrong voting location, they do a provisional ballot. Is there anything that they need to do after that to make sure that their vote is counted, as far as with the provisional ballot?
What they are required, the polling person is required to give you the means for which you can find out whether your vote counted. Okay. It's also like, for instance, if you got there and didn't bring your photo ID, you get to vote a provisional ballot, and then you have to provide your ID within 3 days.
Okay.
After election.
That's good information. Good information.
They're supposed to give you information on how to find out if your provisional ballot will count. If they don't give it to you, ask for it. Ask them, can you tell me, how can I make sure my ballot is counted. And they have the required documentation to give you at each polling location, so people will know whether their vote actually gets counted.
Okay. And one other question, as far as our college students, because we have a lot of college students that actually doesn't live, they're in school in another state.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, if they're in school in another state and they are still registered here, unless they're coming home to vote, they would have had to have requested an absentee ballot, and it's kind of late for that.
Okay.
For them to do that, or their parents could have requested an absentee ballot on their behalf to have it mailed back to them. But if they're, like I said, if they're registered back in Macon-Viv and they're in another state, they would have had to request an absentee ballot.
Okay. That's good information. Is there anything else that you want to share with us, or concerns, or?
Well, again, I just want people to know what's on the ballot, know all of the positions, get a sample ballot. You can get a sample ballot, print it out. You can make your choices at home, bring that sample ballot with you, and you are allowed to bring that sample ballot in and use it to help you vote as you do it in person, if you're going to do it in person. So we want people to know that as well, so that it will speed up the process. Also, if you get an absentee ballot and you change your mind and you have not sent it back in, if the Board of Election hasn't received it, you can cancel that ballot in person by asking the poll worker that you want to cancel your absentee ballot.
Okay.
But to speed up that process, please bring the ballot with you to do that. It's not required, but it will help speed up the process.
Okay.
You will have to sign an affidavit, and then they will cancel that ballot and then allow you to vote in person. If a person decides that, hey, I really don't want to vote absentee, I'm going to go in person to do it, you can cancel that absentee ballot.
Okay. And I know I've heard that when some people changed their minds and wanted to actually vote in person. So,
yeah.
Yes. Well,
Right.
you've shared a lot of good information with us. I knew that you would be able to tell us what we needed to do.
Well, I'd just like to be helpful, and if they really need some other help from the People's Agenda, they can always call my number in Atlanta. It's 404-653-1199 is our office number. We'll be happy to help you, or either go on to thepeoplesagenda.org, send us over some information. We'll be happy to. And I respond, as most people in Atlanta will tell you, when I'm on the radio, a lot of people will call me afterwards, and I do answer my phone. I'm not one of those that do not return the call.
Dr. Butler, Dr. Cujo, and myself, we missed those People Agenda meetings. We haven't been able to make those in the past years, but we really enjoyed.
Well, they have an office here in Macon now.
Wow.
Yes, they have an office here in Macon.
And we're doing our Tuesday meeting that you're talking about. We meet every Tuesday still from 12 to 2, and Dr. Cujo knows that. And we're doing it by Zoom, so now you don't have an excuse.
No, we don't. And I actually Saturday I met the young man. We exchanged phone numbers. Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes, we exchanged information here.
Great.
That's here in Macon. So we're gonna be I'm gonna be reaching out to him. But we just want to thank you so much for your dedication and commitment.
Absolutely.
Because you've been in this for I've been a part of the member of the NAACP since 1999, and you've been headstrong,
No.
still headstrong. Yes.
And I am a life member of the NAACP.
Yes, you are. Yes, you was the president.
Was
the state president of the Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I was just fixing to say that your brother was the state president of the NAACP.
That's correct.
Mr. Butler. Yes, he was, and I was.
Years he was.
Yes, I was a member up under his administration then.
Wow.
Yeah.
While he was president. Yes. They used to have all the meetings here in Macon.
That's right. I used to come to Macon all the time.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's so nice talking to you all, and thank you so much for having me, and I'll be happy to come back anytime.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Yes, she is so very knowledgeable. And like I said earlier, when they were trying to close the polls, and they were basically saying that they were closing, some of the reasons why they were closing the polls because it was low voter turnout in those polls. And basically she brought the data that basically showed that it was not true. And basically what happened was it was low voter turnouts in state and local election, but during the presidential elections, that there was not the voter turnout was not low. Right. So she brought in the data, and she worked with us. She was at the meetings because at that time we had the meeting at the Board of Elections, and I was chosen at that time to serve on the advisory committee. That was something that they had never had before. That was a first. And Dr. Butler was there. She was there just about every meeting. I don't think she missed a meeting, but she was there to all the meetings and making sure that we had the data that we need. And like I said, she's an expert on this voting, and she knows it with her eyes closed.
Absolutely. And her and Dr. Lowry really miss him too. He was that leadership, that was there. And,
so we she's giving you the information you need. Just share the information. We have, like I said, the pandemic has kind of got us in a place where we're not able to really get out and do a lot of things, but social media is there, and you can do so much with social media, getting information out. So we like I said, we want to make sure we reach out young people. The ages between 18 and 40 is the age group that we were trying to make sure we promote and get these people out to vote. So like I said, I don't think that we're going to have that problem with everything that's been going on with this division and systemic racism and all of these things that are going on, this police brutality. Our young people are going to get out and vote. I think that they see what we see, what we've seen all along.
One of the things I think will become an issue, which hasn't become an issue quite yet, as far as on maybe a national or even a local level, is the choice between working families, mothers and fathers who are working from home and have to make the choice as to have their children study virtually, or to go back into the system. And if you're a working parent and your children are home during schooling, that becomes an issue for that parent, because you can't work and supervise a child at the same time. And that becomes very stressful. So I'm sure there are a lot of parents that will be probably voicing those concerns as the schools open up even more.
Yeah. I know right now they have, I think it's SOARs where you can actually, the kids, there's something in place where parents that work, you can, for example, the daycare that they're going to, they can actually, they're helping them with a virtual learning for parents. And then also there's something that has been put in place for parents that are working where they are, for example, if they're having to reduce their hours at work to
kind of accommodate.
Right. They're not having to use like their vacation time or anything like that. There's something out there that the government has put in place for parents that are having to decrease their hours at work to be with their kids for virtual learning. So it's a lot of things out there, and I'm glad of that. I know Bibb County, they voted. I think they're supposed to be going back to school November the 9th, but you still have a choice to decide whether or not you want your child to do virtual learning. From what I read and what I heard on the news last night, that the parent would have to contact the principal if they did, because some parents are still in fear of the contact, right? Yeah. And our kids contracting the COVID. So I'm glad that there's things put in place. It's just that we got a lot of things that's going on. We just need to make sure that families are supplied with the things that they're needed financially, because this has affected a lot of people that, like I say, that do not have medical with family leave, that do not have vacation leave, that do not have leave at all. If you're out, you just don't get paid. So I'm glad that they have something put in place, and we have to make sure that we educate our parents and families, because you can just have some employers that think that they don't know the law, and that they can just basically tell them anything, and they don't know their rights. So a lot of employers will take advantage of that. So we just have to make sure that our parents are aware what's available and their rights, and make sure that they know, what their rights are and what they're entitled to.
Exactly. And one of the things too that's been kind of different in the community now, we see the food delivery from various churches and organizations that are giving out food. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who was saying, sometimes people frown upon individuals that they feel could sustain themselves and wouldn't need, food, but everybody's being affected, because it can be the difference between, paying a light bill or, getting medicine. And so the food being provided helps that household, to make a decision.
Yeah, I think sometimes we just have, people look at the fact that, they look at somebody and they say, well, they're probably getting snaps, or they're probably or whatever. But that may be true, but you don't know whether or not that person is actually working. You don't know whether or not you got some people are stuck in the situation where they just started working. They were not even able to draw unemployment.
Absolutely.
So they have not even been working long enough to draw unemployment. So you just don't know a person's situation. I just wish they would do more for our elderly. We even before the pandemic, I think there's things that need to be put in place for our people that have worked, that are
homebound and
yes,
may not have a vehicle,
people that are disabled, people that are not just drawing Social Security because of age. We have to take care of our elderly and our older people. We have to take care. And I don't think there's enough being done for them. We have a lot of our older people that are having to make a choice between paying their bill and buying food. So that's a very big concern with me.
Right. And like you mentioned, I think we need to be a little more innovative as it relates to the elderly, even with the food, providing the food and everything.
Yes.
That we should get that to them, not have them to come to us.
Right.
Well, I noticed music in the background, which says that we're getting close to our time. But we do want to say we're glad to be back on the air as NAACP Truth. And we certainly appreciate our President Westbrooks, being here and leading the charge of getting out the vote here in our community, and continue to lead us in the NAACP.
And thank you all for all you do, and tune in next time.
Amen.
You have been listening to the live broadcast of the NAACP with Gwinnett Westbrook and Mr. Dumas. Come join us next Monday at 4 o'clock p.m. on 980 WTDO.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants of the broadcast.
Connecting the community through gospel. The new 980 AM WDDO Perry Macon.